FYI, I want to make this really clear that all of what I'm saying is a huge generalization. India is fucking enormous and is really, really diverse. There's so many different cultures and religions and traditions and languages. So when I say India, I don't literally mean all of India. This is just something you may experience because this is something that I've experienced. And I am also speaking through my own lived experience, which can also come off as maybe ignorance if I'm just not well educated on something. So if I get something wrong, don't be afraid to correct me in the comment section. So it finally stopped raining. It's monsoon here in Goa for India. And I was going to set up a nice tripod in the field and do this video today, and I probably will do some of the video that way. But I thought, why not get a head start on the culture shock you might feel when coming to India. To be completely honest, when I first came to India, I arrived in Delhi, New Delhi, from the airport, the main international airport that most of you will probably be flying into when coming to India, especially for the first time. And how do I put this? I was actually underwhelmed when it came to the culture shock aspect because I've been traveling and living abroad now for a little over 7 years, which just sounds insane because it feels like it went by in a blink of an eye. But I was told by everyone and anyone I spoke to about India, it doesn't matter how long you've been traveling through Asia or anywhere else, India is a completely different universe on its own. And I do agree with that, but I have to say I do think that the fact that I lived abroad in South and Southeast Asia for at least 5 years before, I do think it kind of helps soften the blow when it comes to culture shocks in India. That doesn't mean that I didn't experience anything new that is unique to India, but I'm saying I wasn't like overwhelmed like people said that I would be when first landing in India. So I think in this part of the video, I'm mostly going to share what I think you might experience as culture shock when coming to India, especially if it's your first time ever been in India or first time traveling as a female traveler, as a solo female traveler, or just traveling as a backpacker in general, as well as sharing with you some new things that I've experienced.
2,000 years later.
How was that intro? Okay? So I came out here to this beautiful field that is behind my house. So this is basically my backyard. Anyway, culture shock. Because I've been living abroad for so long and I've been traveling, culture shock to me doesn't really come that easily. So I'm trying to put my feet in the shoes of someone, who may have never been to Asia, hasn't been living abroad for 7 years, and is brand new to this beautiful country that is India. I think the lighting's better. There you go, you can see me now. Been doing this for a long time. You would think I know where the lighting is. Okay, so let's get comfortable. I'm gonna sit down. There we go. A bit more comfortable. Okay, there's a little dog running around. Alright, so in no particular order is traffic. Traffic in India is really nothing new when it comes to just Asia or Southeast Asia in general. Every country I've ever been to, whether it's India, Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, Indonesia, it doesn't really matter. The traffic is just different when it comes to South and Southeast Asia. It's not that there aren't any traffic rules or traffic laws, but it just seems like people kind of pick and choose when they want to follow those traffic rules and traffic laws. Okay. All right, we're just getting really, really hot over there. I try to come out in good lighting, but I think maybe another hour could have done it, but the show must go on. So, traffic. There's a lot of honking that goes on when it comes to traffic. And again, this is not really specific to India. This can happen in South and Southeast Asia. The traffic isn't meant to be rude. I feel like in the West, you blow your horn because there's an emergency, or you blow your horn to kind of like be rude to someone, almost like hurry the fuck up, you're in my way, stuff like that. But traffic usually throughout Asia is not meant to be rude. It's just sort of a warning and almost like probably just second nature to a lot of the drivers. drivers to sort of just honk their horn. Sometimes if you're in more rural areas like the mountains or the deserts where there's not a lot of street signs and lights and stuff like that, people will honk the horn as a warning to let the other person know that they're coming, right? Like let's say there's a corner or a turn, they'll honk the horn to let them know, I'm coming, I can't see you and you can't see me. So this is sort of honking as a precaution basically. But even in the big cities, it can be really overwhelming for a lot of people who's not used to it, because it's sometimes constant honking, and just the combination of all the city noise together can be kind of overwhelming for other people. And what I would suggest is maybe wearing your headphones, listening to music so you don't become overwhelmed by all the noise. But for the most part, it just becomes white noise at some point and you just get used to it. So other things with traffic is like sometimes, like especially here in India, you'll see people, especially on a motorbike, will just drive on the sidewalk. Like if there's a lot of traffic and it's like a traffic jam, they'll just drive on the sidewalk to get around all the traffic. The cars won't do that. It's more the motorbikes. Again, you see this in other places like Thailand, and sometimes you see people driving the opposite direction. Let's say they pass their stop, and instead of going all the way around the traffic bin, they'll just sort of go as close as they can to the curb or on the sidewalk, drive in the opposite direction to take their turn. You'll also see that in places like Thailand or Indonesia. The other thing that people might be, when it comes to culture shock, when it comes to traffic, is crossing the street. Just trust, like be cautious, be aware of what's going on around you, but just trust that the locals has been driving this traffic since they were like kids. And again, depending on where you are, some rural areas, and again, this happens in Thailand and other Southeast Asian countries. If you're in like the countryside or rural areas, you'll even see like kids driving, children driving motorbikes, children driving cars and stuff like that. So a lot of them are really used to this. Just trust that they see you. As long as you're following the rules and as long as you're being cautious, everything will be fine. And sometimes you'll see things like, you know, a family of 6 on one motorbike, or someone on a motorbike but they have like a huge mattress, a refrigerator, or their entire house on the back. But it's just what you see. It's just normal, but it's something that you might see, and it might be culture shocking to you. You might see some buffalo coming behind me. So speaking of buffalo, some of the things that you will see when you come to India is animals, and I think the most famous and the most stereotypical are cows. I feel like when people think of India, they think of cows in the streets, and there's no secret that in a lot of the cultures and traditions and religions here in India, cows are considered sacred. This is not a cow, this is a buffalo. That is not all of India, that is not all of Indian tradition and all of India's religion. Not every Indian person believes that cows are sacred. However, in India, no matter where you are in India, no matter what your beliefs are in India, cows are very much protected. That means you're not allowed to slaughter a cow or farm them for their meat. You're not allowed to be abusive to cows or hurt cows or anything like that, because they are very much protected. So cows definitely aren't the only thing that you will see when it comes to wildlife here in India. And again, this is not specific to India. This is really like you see this throughout Southeast Asia. But besides cows, you will see monkeys. Monkeys are one of the other things that you see, and it really depends where you are in India. Once again, you will see more of one animal, less of another animal depending on where you are. Like when I was in Rajasthan, you saw lots of monkeys, and they would literally just be hanging out in the streets, just hanging out like on top of buildings and stuff like that. The two main monkeys I've seen, and I'm not saying these are the only monkey species that are in India, but the two that I've seen are the black-faced monkeys. I don't know the specific name of them, maybe I'll have it on the screen, but the black-faced monkeys and the pink or pale-faced monkeys. Now the black-faced monkeys are fucking cool as hell. They're like really chill. I feel like they're literally like, you know, 1,000 years from just being Neanderthals, because they're so human-like. They will literally come sit next to you, cross their legs, and like smoke a cigarette and be like, what's up? You know what I mean? They're really chill. They're really calm. I still will keep my distance. I'm not saying like you should go up to any monkeys or any wildlife and go pet them. Even the buffaloes here, like you have to be kind of cautious, because sometimes they'll like ram you or like butt you with their head. Not like ram, but like butt you with their heads if they find you annoyingly standing too close to them or whatever. But the other type of monkeys is the pale and pink face monkeys. Those monkeys, I don't like them. They suck. They usually come off very aggressive, mean. I have been chased by twice by pink or pale face monkeys, once in Burundi and once in Rajasthan, and I'll leave that for my story time videos because it's actually hilarious and also terrifying. And I have another friend that was also chased by the pale and pink face monkeys, and she was actually bit. So these monkeys tend to just be more aggressive. I don't really know why. Again, it depending on where you are in India, you'll see more or less of this a certain type of animal. Like goats, you don't see that many goats in Goa. You see them sometimes, but you don't really see that many of them. But in like Dharamshala, which is North India, you see goats like everywhere, and they're super cute and adorable. Another animal you'll see are dogs. Stray dogs are pretty common, not just in India, but in South and Southeast Asia. And again, this is generalization. I'm not talking about all of India, but you will see this. Hey, future Shamika here. Walking through the drizzle because it's monsoon here in India. And as I'm editing this video, I'm realizing two things. It's going to be a lot longer than I wanted it to be. And because of that reason, I'm going to put time steps at the bottom in the description. So if you don't want to go through the entire thing and there's just certain things you want to hear about, you can go to the timestamps. Hello. So I found a new spot. It's a bit shadier, kind of back here in the wilderness somewhere. And I thought I would at least finish up the animal culture shock before I moved to a different location. So where were we? Right, monkeys. So besides the monkeys that you will see are pigs. Like you see lots of pigs and hogs. Again, it depends on where you are in India, and a lot of these animals seem very wild and free. Even if they are owned by someone, they'll probably not be like held. Speaking of pigs, there's two big hogs coming back here. I hope not, because they can also get a little aggressive, the really big fat ones. Yes, even if they do belong to someone, they probably won't be really held in like behind a wall or a fence. A lot of times they just roam free. So again, it depends where you are. You see lots of pigs here in Goa and Arambol just roaming free. I'm not really sure if they are just free pigs, if they belong to the community or not. I kind of have a theory that they use the pigs to sort of graze and eat all the trash, because a lot of people will just throw their food scraps outside. I do that too. Like if I have food scraps, I could just throw them to the pigs and they'll just eat them up. So they kind of use the pigs as almost like their food dumpster in a way. And then they will slaughter a pig now and again, mostly a male, but there's tons of little pigs and tons of little piglets running around here in Arambol. So you'll see pigs, and you'll see pigs and hogs in other different parts of India, but not all of India. Oh, that's what I was talking about before. Dogs. You see lots of stray dogs. Again, that's not just like specific in India. You see that everywhere in like South and Southeast Asia. A lot of times in America or in the West, when you see a stray dog, you just think danger, because stray dogs are just not like allowed, I guess. Like if there's a stray dog, someone calls animal control picks up the dogs and puts them in the pound, and it most likely either gets adopted or euthanized. But here there are just stray dogs everywhere, and for the most part they're friendly. The only time dogs start to get a little bit dangerous is when they start to run in packs in the wild. That means they have less contact with people and they're running in packs, so there's the hierarchy and they're kind of showing off for each other, and so they get kind of violent then. And of course you'll see like elephants. You'll see elephants in Rajasthan, but you won't necessarily see elephants. I haven't seen any elephants necessarily just roam free, but all of the animals that I've already mentioned above, like you will just see them out and about. And a lot of times human beings just coexist with the animals, and you respect their space and they respect your space, and you don't really bother them and they don't bother you, and you just kind of understand the animal's behavior, and people just coexist together. Now, speaking of cows, another thing that a lot of people talk about, or they'll even use to sort of demean or shame India or something like that, is when there's animals roaming free, that means animals take shits. There's going to be animal shit, right? And so I've had people come into my comment section on my Indian videos and kind of make fun of India and say like, oh well, there's a bunch of cow shit everywhere, like how can you want to be there? or like say that India is not civilized because there's cow shit and there's cows just roaming around and stuff like that, which is really disgusting behavior, and I don't know why people go out of their way to say those things. It's not true. However, I'm not gonna lie and say there isn't cow shit, because if there's cows, there's cow shit. I'm gonna try to paint a picture as best I can. It's not like there are just mountains of cow shit everywhere. It's not like the streets are just litter and just cow dung everywhere you go and you can't step anywhere without stepping in cow shit, right? It really depends where you are, but like here in Goa, the cows don't just hang out in the streets. They don't just hang out in the pavement and the sidewalk because it's not comfortable. You will see cows there, and sometimes you will see cow shit. But for the most part, the cows hang out in the fields, like where I am right now or where I was previously. They go there to hang out, to sleep, to rest, to get shade from the sun, to spend time with their babies and stuff like that. And they do a lot of grazing and eating in the fields. So since they spend most of the time in nature, they shit in the field in nature, or even further back where people don't even go. They go hang out back there. That's usually where they go to the bathroom at. So it's not like in the street or in the sidewalk, even though you will still see it once in a while, but it's not like all the cows are just crapping in the streets. And then what happens when they do is, like, just like any human being, Indian people want their pavements in their homes and their properties where they live and where they do business to be clean, so they will just clean it. They will clean the streets, they will clean the pavement. So it's not just sitting there all day or just piling up or accumulating. They clean their fucking land. It's their home. They want it to be clean just like anyone else. And I think people have this stereotype in their head that like for some reason Indian people aren't clean or hygienic or something like that, which is not true. Like a lot of Indian people, just like people in like Thailand or South and Southeast Asia, are actually quite hygienic. It's very part of their culture. They take more showers and bathe more than most Westerners and most Americans. However, I'll do another video about like breaking stereotypes of India in a different video. Or if it's like in Rajasthan, like in the desert town, the cow, or like in Pushkar, the cows, you'll see more cows in the street. So because they're spending more time in the street, they might crap in the street more, but they also go out into the desert and they also go out into the nature. But again, they just clean it. The people who live there, the people who run the businesses, they just clean the streets. If you go to Pushkar, like in the market area, which is basically Pushkar, it's basically the entire town is like a market area. The streets are clean. You know, and they clean their streets, so you don't really see it. There are places in smaller towns in India, stuff like that, where they'll have like the area where everyone throws their trash, and that's not pleasant to see. But the main public areas are usually cleaned by the people of India, by the locals. Or if you want to get really TMI about it, the cows and the dogs themselves would eat the cow shit. So it doesn't just sit there, all right? And I'm not gonna lie and sit here and be like, oh my god, it's so pleasant to see cow shit. Of course, it's never pleasant, but we're all adults here, and you treat it just like if you see dog shit. You see the dog shit, it's not pleasant, you walk around it and you move on with your life. It's not as bad as people would imagine that it is, okay? So I just want to get that out of the way. So that's enough of all the animal culture shocks. I'm really gonna try to make this video not as long as it seems like it's going to be, but I have more culture shocks to go through. But we're gonna change location and probably finish out this list another day. So the other culture shock that you might experience if you're Westerners are things that we in the West might consider to be rude or impolite isn't necessarily the same everywhere else in the world. Something like staring. Staring isn't considered rude everywhere else on the planet. Not every country considers that rude. Some countries and cultures just consider it to, oh, look at the baby. Okay. Some cultures and countries just consider it to be like a duh. Like, you look different, of course I'm going to stare at you, duh. Kind of like that. They just don't consider it rude. So if someone's staring at you, it's not like they're trying to be impolite. They're not trying to be disrespectful. The other thing might be cutting in line. Now again, these things are not just specific to India, also with the staring. But cutting a line, I've experienced it in Thailand and Vietnam and also in India. It's kind of like, I feel like in Thailand, it's more or less if you take a half a step too long to move forward in the line or to take up your position, the person behind you is just going to go in front and cut in front of you. Here in India, even if like a lot of times if I'm like waiting at the ATM or something like that, if I'm not close enough to the person in front of me or close enough to the door door waiting my turn, an Indian person would just come right in front of me and just slide into that position. Usually Indian guys, but a lot of times if you just sort of like, excuse me, I was waiting, they will back up and profusely apologize. And again, when I say the culture, you have to remember, it's not all of India, it's not everyone, and it's not in even all situations. It's just something you may experience because it's something I've experienced. Hey guys, so the other day I had buffalo behind me, now I have cows. Alright, so we're still on culture shock, and we're still on things that you may, as a person coming from the West, might find rude, that's not necessarily considered rude in other places. And one of them would be the way the two different genders between men and women behave and interact with one another, right? And so let me give you a quick example. One of them is, there was this couple that went to this Indian restaurant, sort of a nice upper class fancy Indian restaurant, I guess in Delhi or Mumbai. And I think the girl was a foreigner and the guy was an Indian guy. She noticed that the waiter, who was an Indian guy, wasn't making like direct eye contact with her or really interacting with her. Even when she would say something to him directly, like a question or ask about the menu or even order her food, he would direct his answer to the guy, to her date. After, that interaction, he went away, and she kind of went on this rant about how like this guy was a misogynist, that he was being so disrespectful to her. And the guy had to explain to her that for him, he's actually being respectful. He's being respectful to their relationship, that they're a couple, that they're together, and he's being respectful to the guy, right? Whether you think that's wrong or right, that's really not the point. The point is that this waiter was not purposely being disrespectful to her. That's not where he was coming from. That's not where his heart was. His heart was to try to be as respectful as possible, even though she was taking it a different way, interpreting it a different way, or even if she thinks it's still not okay, that wasn't what he was trying to do, right? You have to kind of be careful. I think a lot of Westerners need to get over the fact that America, Europe, it's not the planet, it's not the world. Not every culture is your culture. Not everything you believe is right or wrong, black or white, rude or polite. Not everybody has to agree with you, and not everybody follows those sort of social agreements, those social contracts or constructs, right? Like most cultures outside of the West practice very traditional gender roles, and that's something you will come across not just in India but throughout Asia and Southeast Asia. And so, for instance, places like Rajasthan, and again, I'm not talking about all of India, I'm not talking about the whole of India. India is huge, diverse, enormous, all right? But there are some cultures who still practice very traditional gender roles. So like places like Rajasthan, like you might notice, like walking down the street, you're surrounded by Indian men, right? Like the Indian men are the ones who sort of run the everyday to day. They run the businesses, they run the shops, they run the restaurants, and the women are at home. They're taking care of the baby, they're cleaning the house, they're rearing the children, they're preparing dinner. And so you may see them outside sort of running errands, getting food and things for the homes, but like the businesses, the restaurants are run by the men. And I'm not saying every single business, and I'm not saying every single restaurant you may see women here and there, but you will notice a difference, especially if you're coming from the West, because I feel like we're so used to it being a very diverse range of different genders outside running businesses, especially when it comes to services and stuff like that. Women usually are in a service industry more than men in the West, but like here is kind of the opposite. And again, it depends where you are in India, but it's something that you would notice. Like for me, when I bought like sanitary napkins or tampons in the West, or even in other Asian countries, I always had the option to go to a woman. To like, if I'm buying my tampons, I would go to a woman cashier, just out of out of instinct. Like that's always what I did in America, so that I always look for the woman cashier to buy my tampons. I have never bought tampons from men so many times in my life except in India. I believe 99% of the time when I bought tampons or sanitary napkins, it was from a man. And so that's something you might notice, the way boys and girls interact with one another. Again, it really depends on the culture, the area of India someone was raised, their religion, their beliefs, and all those things. But a lot of times, like, the boys and girls are just separated, like they don't have like just casual friendly interactions, especially as they get older and they're becoming teenagers and hitting puberty. It's kind of like, I don't know, it's the fear of like having sex or starting relationships when they're not the one that they're arranged to be married to or something like that. I've met an Indian guy here who was in his 30s, and he was basically said he didn't have his first female interaction, like conversation as friends interaction, until he was 19 years old. There's even other cultures here in India where once the boy hits a certain age, he goes and lives in a house with just men. He lives away from the mother, he lives away from the women, and he lives with just the men and the boys. And so casual interaction with the opposite sex can just be read differently. Like for instance, I was sitting in Pushkar and I was having a chai, and some foreign guy just sat next to me and we just had a chat. He was like Italian or something, and we just had a quick chat, and that was it, and he went along his way. And someone in my guest house saw that, so when I went back to my guest house, the guy came to me and he was like, oh, so I saw you with a guy, like what was that about? What was that about? I saw you sitting with a guy. And it was like, it was just a simple conversation. But because for them it's like you don't really interact with the other sex unless you are meant to be dating that person or be with that person, or that person's a family member or something like that. And again, this is not all of India, and this is, I have to keep reiterating that because I don't want to like offend like any Indian people who say like, well, that's not what I had to go through. It's not all of India. It's not all of the cultures, it's not all the religions, it really depends, but it's something that you may come across. And so even friendly interaction with the opposite sex can come off as flirtation or something more than you intended it to be. So you have to kind of be aware of your body language and how you're interacting with someone, because it might be read differently. It doesn't mean something bad is going to happen to you or anything like that, but they might misread your body language or something like that. So you just have to be careful with that. But there's a lot of other Indian people who grew up in very progressive families, modern families, who don't have that same mindset. So again, it really just depends. But it might be something that you notice when you come to India or just South and Southeast Asia in general. Hey guys, another day back out in the field. There's some kids behind me playing kickball or soccer depending where you're from. I love seeing kids playing outside in the field in the fresh air, moving their bodies. Like that's a big thing that you see like throughout South and Southeast Asia. And it's not that they don't have video games or smartphones, it's just like they still play outside. They're still kids, you know. I love that. Anyway, culture shocks. So this video is definitely going to be broken up through days. But anyway, I wanted to talk about culture shocks that you might experience when it comes to the hygienic bathroom shower realm of things. So one of the things you might experience is squatter toilets. Squatter toilets is not just in India, of course. It's out through South and Southeast Asia. I've experienced my first squatter toilet in Thailand, and basically a squatter toilet is kind of like, instead of it being sort of lifted off the floor, it's basically inserted into the floor, and it's basically like a hole with porcelain around it, and it has like grips on the side where you put your feet and you simply squat down and use the bathroom. It took me around 2 years before I started using a squatter toilet, and now like I actually prefer squatter toilets over actual Western toilets, especially if you're going number 2, because if you're a female, we hover over toilet seats anyway. We don't put our butts on public toilet seats. And if you gotta go at number 2, it's straining on the legs, on the thigh muscles, if you know what I mean. Or you're trying to put tissue on the toilet seat, which is not great for the planet as well. And so when you're squatting, you're actually in a really comfortable position because you're just hanging out, right? And so it's not that big of a deal. And if you look at some studies online, they actually say the squatter position is better for your digestion or releasing things out of your body, because you're kind of forced to sit up straight. You want to balance. And a lot of times when you're on a like a Western toilet, you're kind of scrouched over or whatever. And so when you're sitting up straight, everything comes out a little bit easier and cleaner. And so sometimes when you're at places like airports and malls or places like that, they might have the option for both Western and squatter toilets. And before, I would wait in a long line just to use the Western toilet because it was like I was terrified of the squatter toilet. Now I prefer the squatter toilet. I go directly to the squatter toilet. I mean, I can use both. I haven't forgot how to use it, but so that's something you might see. And then along with squatter toilets, you might have bum guns or butt guns. And bum guns and squatted toilet is something I honestly think the West should adopt. Just using toilet paper is not a thing for me anymore. It does not get you clean. So bum guns or butt guns or toilet guns, or however you want to call it, they're like little nozzles on the side of the wall next to the toilet, wherever, and then when you use it, you just pick it up and you spray yourself with the bum gun. And some people just use the bum gun. I don't do that because I don't like to shake and pull up my pants when my butt's still wet. But I use a combination of the bum gun and toilet paper, and it's better for the planet because if you just use the bum gun, you're not using toilet paper, so you're not using tissue. Or if you use the bum gun with a combination of toilet paper, you're using less. And the other thing that you might see or find throughout South and Southeast Asia or India is bucket showering. Now, bucket showering is basically showering, but instead of using the shower head, you use a bucket. So you will fill up the bucket with a faucet of hot and cold water or whatever, however you want the temperature. And then there's a smaller bucket. So there's a bigger bucket with the water. There's a smaller little bucket with a handle, and you just take the water and you pour it all over your gorgeous naked body. And so you see that a lot as well. I've seen that more in India than like other South and Southeast Asian countries. Here in India, for the past like couple of years, I've honestly just done bucket showers because when I first got to India, I was doing a lot of Rajasthan areas, and the showers, they like, even if they had a shower head, it wasn't necessarily like working properly. Like the water pressure wasn't great, or just spatting out water, or it was taking too long for the water to get hot. And it was almost like if you just used the faucet, the water got hot immediately. It was just easier. The water came out really strong. And I just got used to and enjoyed the feeling of taking a bucket of water and just pouring it on my body. I like the sensation. So for the past year or so, I've been just using bucket showers. And if I go to a new place and they have a fine shower head, then I just use the shower head, but I have no problems using a bucket bath or a bucket shower. The other thing is wet baths. Wet baths is basically when the shower and the toilet and everything is in one room. There's no separation. That means there's no like tub with a wall or a glass sliding wall or a curtain or anything like that to separate the shower from the rest of the room. So when you take a shower, the entire bathroom gets wet. That's why it's called a wet bath. So that's something else you might come across. Again, everything I'm saying is not inclusive to all of India. Just something you may come across, something you may experience. There's plenty of places that have Western bathrooms and Western toilets and stuff like that, and Western showers. All right, we're in another field. The one we were just in was behind my house. This is literally right beside my house. And I live in the yellow building, yellow oranges building, top floor. Okay, so culture shock. Another one you might experience is hassle sales or haggle sales. I feel like a lot of times the thing that females may feel intimidated by is not necessarily like sexual or aggressive harassment. And I kind of mentioned this earlier. It's places like Rajasthan where the men are the ones kind of outside running the businesses. A lot of the Hi. So in Rajasthan, in places like Rajasthan, a lot of the men are the ones who run the outdoor businesses. And so let's say you're walking down the street and there's like a marketplace and they practice something like haggle sale. So basically there's men on either side of the street basically calling at you to try to convince you to come into their business, their place of business. And it can feel overwhelming because it can feel like a non-stop effort to get you to buy something. And it's, madame, come in, this price, I have silk, I have art, I have jewelry, I have this and I have this. And it's like, even if you say no, it's like a constant badgering feeling of like, I said no, but they're not taking my no as an answer. And even if you said no to 20 men before, the next 20 are still going to ask you. It's almost like they're trying to wear you down. And in certain situations, it can feel really overwhelming, especially because if you're like a female and it's all men. So it's like that sort of masculine man energy with sort of like this aggressive selling process. And sometimes I might even like grab at you. And again, it's not in a sexual violent or aggressive way, but it's like still like when we practice very like personal space in the US and the West, and especially when it comes to the attentions between men and women, it's a very big no-no for a man to just go up to a woman and like grab her or even harass her or follow her or badger her, even if it's just to make a sale. And so it can feel really overwhelming. And so that's just an FYI. Again, it's not like the sexual harassment. It just feels like if it's like selling harassment, basically, if I'm making any sense, if I'm making myself clear. So that's something you might come across. I've met, girls who travel through India. When they get to certain areas, they just practice like horse visors, where they just don't look or make eye contact with anybody because they don't want to get roped into a sale, right? And then another thing you might come across, so I'm gonna go into the next sort of culture shock, is like scammy things. Like every culture, every country, even the US, even the West, will do scams, especially when it comes to tourists. They would do scams. And like India is no special, like it is the same thing. But one of the unique kind of scams I've seen in India is they're really good at pretending to be your friend and to pretend to really be interested in you. They will ask you where you're from, and they'll say they have a cousin or a sister or a son in the same location, right? And then they'll ask you if you want to go out for chai or something like that, and you're like, oh wow, they're really interested in me, and this is great. And then you go out to chai with them, you sit down, and within an hour or so, they're calling their friend who has a tourism agency and their other friend who has a fabric shop, and all of a sudden you've been roped into agreeing to do things or buy things that you weren't necessarily trying to do. And I fell into that so many times when I first got to India. It's mostly in Rajasthan that I've seen. Again, do not take me wrong, this is not all Indian people or all Indian, even store owners or shop owners or anything like that. It's just something you may experience. I mean, even Indian people who travel to India experience this, like religious scams. I want to do a whole video about spiritual tourism, because a lot of people come to India. Oh my god, look at all the cows. These are cows. This dog is still following me. But a lot of people come to India to pursue spiritualness, whatever, to enlighten themselves, I guess. The whole eat, pray, love thing. And because of that, there is something like spiritual tourism, and people will take advantage of people who are searching for answers. And so you get a lot of spiritual scams. There's something called like a Baba here, if I'm saying it correctly, which is like a spiritual holy man who has basically sworn off material possessions and stuff like that, and they live in temples and they depend on the kindness of the locals to feed them and stuff like that. From what I heard, if it's a real Baba, they won't actually ask you for anything. The locals know who they are and they feed them and take care of them. I'm gonna do a whole video, a separate video on scams in India, but that's something that you might come across. But again, that is not specific to India or Asia at all. It's just a part of traveling, is a part of being a tourist, all right? So just keep an eye out for it. So speaking of spiritual tourism, let's talk about spirituality and just like the different religions that you might come across here in India that might be culture shocking to you. Maybe it won't be, but it depends where you are in India. Again, India is big and diverse. There's many different religions, there's many different traditions and beliefs, ideologies, even so many different languages here in India just alone. And so you might come across shocking spiritual religions, and I mean, maybe I'll play some videos in here. I can't think, I'm not that educated to say which one is which and what they believe in, but you might come across that. There's a lot of pilgrimages that goes on in India, with Indian locals will pilgrimage to different temples and gurus and areas of India for different holidays or religious beliefs or spiritual beliefs and stuff like that. So that's something you might come across. I mean, I think the biggest one that people know of India is like Hinduism or Buddhism, but there is also Catholicism and also Islam in India. And so depending on where part of India you experience each one, and some of it, parts of India is just mixed and diverse. So that's something you might come across. Like there are the naked Babas that are in like Varanasi, places like Pushkar or Rishikesh, where you see lots of not only just locals, but a lot of expats, a lot of foreigners that are very, very heavily involved into these sort of spirituality. A lot of people here, they come do the silent retreats and stuff like that here. So like you'll see a lot of it, a lot of new age spirituality, a lot of like hippie new age stuff. A lot of the communities are involved into that. So if you're like super anti-religious and anti-spiritual and you think all of it's a crock of crap, then you're gonna run into a lot of it, and you just take it with a grain of salt, or educate yourself. It's really up to you. But I also want to again reiterate the whole spiritual scammy thing. It does happen here in India. It is not just Indian people might scam you. It's also a lot of Westerners come to India to do that same thing, because again, when there is a need and people are desperate for answers, spiritual answers and stuff like that, people will take advantage of that. So that's a lot of that goes on, but it's also a lot of people who genuinely just want to have a spiritual relationship with God and just heighten their faith, or just educate themselves about different spiritual beliefs and stuff like that. There are genuine people here, but there are a lot of posers here, so you just have to use your intuition to know how to divide which one is which, you know what I mean? India again is very diverse, and there's a lot of different ways you can travel here in India. You can travel in luxury and have everything super pampered and never be uncomfortable, and then there's other ways you can travel to India where everything's not going to be always comfortable. I prefer that way, even though I like to be pampered and I like luxury just as much as the other person, but I don't need everything to always be comfortable. So some of the things you might come across, especially when you're in smaller towns that are a bit more rural, a bit more country and stuff like that, is like you might not always come across having hot water or a soft bed. And sometimes, especially in places like Pushkar where I lived, or even Goa during monsoon, the electricity would go out. There's electricity outages and stuff like that. For me, these things are really nothing. They're just simple little inconveniences in life that really makes no dent in my enjoyment or happiness. Hello, how are you? But for other people who come straight from the West, for them, oh my God, these mosquitoes keep biting my fingers. Other people who come straight from the West, it might seem like a really big deal to you because everything's so convenient that it might seem like a bigger deal. But honestly, again, this is not all of India. Like if you go to other places like big cities and stuff like that, you might not even encounter that. But I prefer smaller towns, so I don't need everything to be convenient or every single thing to be super comfortable. Like I'm fine with things being a little bit inconvenient, so that's okay with me. But that's something you might run across when you're in smaller towns, mountain towns and stuff like that. Other things that are super stereotypical when people think of India is like eating with your hands. Honestly, like you don't come across it that much in India. Like you might come across it here and there, but most restaurants, even if you see local people eating with their hands, they will have utensils available for you. I have never had to eat with my hands. A lot of foreigners, a lot of expats prefer to eat with their hands too, because they feel like it's them like embracing the culture. But I don't really know even a lot of Indian people who always eat with their hands. I know some people, like it depends on what they're eating. Like some food they'll eat with their hands and other foods they won't. So, but it's something you come across. It's hygienic. They wash their hands. It's fine. A lot of people feel like eating with your hands make you more close to the food. Like it's like a spiritual thing. Like eating with your hands, it's like a sensory thing too, like touching the food with your hands and being very involved with the food. You're more connected to the food. It's better. Some people think it's better for the digestion and stuff like that. So there's reasons behind it. But honestly, if you don't want to do it, like it's a very rare occasion where you come across where you have no choice. You know what I mean? Okay, I'm walking back to my place. There are so many mosquitoes out here right now. It's about that time of day when the sun starts to set. The mosquitoes come out. Cows. The other thing you might come across is the parent-child relationship. I feel like in the West, it depends where you are in the West, and also depends on your own culture and your community. Like if you're very religious or you come from a very traditional conservative home, it might be different. But I feel like in the West, it's very culturally accepted that at 18, you're grown, you do what you want to do. Like parents don't really have much say what you can do with your life and stuff like that. You just do you. And that's basically how I live. Like my parents have no say in my life. They barely did when I was 17, and they definitely don't know. They definitely don't now that I'm at this age. But in India and other South and Southeast Asian countries, again, I repeat, not all of India, they have a very the parents have a lot more say what goes on in their life, whether it comes to what college they go to, what degree they get, or what major they major in, what job they get, where they live, and who they marry, and stuff like that. You know, it's no secret that in India, arranged marriage is practiced. This is something that I definitely, like, that was new to me. It was like, I met people who were like in their 30s, and they're like in Goa, and they'll tell me like, oh, I lied to my parents I was in Goa. I told them I was somewhere else because my parents wouldn't approve of me being in Goa. And these people are in their 30s, you know what I mean? Or I meet, again, 30-year-old men who will cut their beard because their parents don't approve of their beard. Like, stuff like that, where we're like, why do you care what your parents think? You're grown. But here is like, parents have a lot more say over their kids. Sometimes it's culture, sometimes it's because they're funding their kids' life, sometimes it's because they're paying for their kids' education, but sometimes it's just culture, and it really depends on who you speak to in India, whether they have a problem with that or not. Some young people think it's fine, some young people don't like it. It really depends. For me, I could never live like that because I'm very Western that way. Like, my parents have no say over me, but that's something that you might actually come across. That's something you might come across once you really get to know India and Indian people. That's, you know, maybe if you're just here for 2 weeks you won't really see that, but if you really get invested in the community here, you'll see that. So I definitely didn't plan on this video being so long, so congratulations and thank you if you made it this far. I didn't just want to spit out like top 10 culture shocks and then leave it there. I wanted to really explain them to you. That's why the video ended up being a lot longer than I thought, and it's probably so many things that I missed, like even thinking of the animals that you will come across. Like, I forgot camels and donkeys and mules and all the little alien buggies you might see. I'm sure there's so much I missed, and if you have your own things that you might think that people might have that might be culture shock to them when visiting India, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. But I'm going to leave you with my one last culture shock, but this is a really pleasant one, so I hope you actually did make it to the end. And for me, it is the community. I once again have been living and traveling abroad for 7 years now, a little over 7 years. So I was living abroad a little over 5 years before I came to India. And even though I love the people and the interactions I've had in all the countries I've been to, all the experiences and friendships I made, the community that you can develop here in India is unlike anywhere else that I've traveled to. It's because a lot of people who love India continuously come back to India. A lot of people come here just to make a home here or relocate or, you know, make a new life here in India. So a lot of friendships and real communities really cultivate and develop here in India. And one of the things I love the most is that, unlike a lot of other places I've been where expats and locals are kind of, there's a separation between the two groups. And if you stay in a country long enough, like Thailand or Indonesia, you will make local friends, but it's not as easy, you know what I mean? There's this barrier. And I feel like in India, because India has developed a really good domestic traveling culture within India and the Indian people, when you travel, you're not just traveling with other Westerners, you're not just traveling with other expats and foreigners, you're traveling with Indian people who are born and raised here, went to school here, know the history of India, know the culture of India, and they're all diverse because they come from all different backgrounds and religions and cultures and, you know, sometimes languages. And so, like, if you want to know something about India, for the most part, you can kind of just turn to your side and ask somebody because they're from the country you're in. And so it feels less of this isolation or this separation between foreigner, Westerner, and locals like I felt in other countries, where it's like we're all with each other. You know what I mean? And that's one of my favorite parts about India, is how easily it is to meet Indian locals and develop friendships and relationships with the Indian people, along with all the other expats and foreigners. This community is filled with so many artists, like so much, like artist infused community where everyone is a musician or a dancer or a painter or a writer or an actress or some sort of artist or creator. Everyone's an entrepreneur, either working online or creating products or services right here in India where they can exchange within the community. You know, yoga classes, breath work, meditation, massage, Reiki, like everyone's coming up with something or developing their own skill to be able to give back to the community. There's been so many times that I've traveled throughout India, and of course it's a bit more special for the last 2 years because there was lockdown. But it's like everywhere I go, I know somebody, and there's a certain comfort to that, because when you live abroad, especially when you're a solo female traveler like me, one of the ways to keep from feeling like you have no connection to nothing is developing community and relationships in the countries that you're in. And I've done it in all the countries I've been in, but in India it was like the next level. And when I have to leave India, when I do leave India, hopefully I'll be able to come back. But it's not going to be like leaving the country that I've enjoyed for the last 2 years. It's going to be like leaving my community. It is going to be a lot more harder, a lot more emotional, and a lot more anxiety ridden. But I feel like that's something you may not be expecting. But in order to really take advantage, if that's the right word, of the community, you have to embrace it. You have to be kind of open-minded. You have to be willing to let your guard down a bit and maybe experience things that you never experienced before. That doesn't mean don't practice caution and have boundaries or anything like that. Make sure you're safe, your person is safe, your space and stuff is safe. But like I said, it's a hippie community, it's artists, it's eclectics, it's spiritual people, and so I think if you're coming straight from a modern West, maybe it feels a little hokey dokey or something like that. But you know, just be open-minded and embrace it, because yeah, everyone is their unique little character, but you know, that's kind of the nice part about it as well. Yeah, that's about it, guys. That's the end of my culture shock video. And if you want, I'm gonna start doing more informational videos like this because I ran out of footage to make vlogs. So I think the next one I might do is like the top reasons why you might hate India, love India, or the things that are different between India and the US and what I think they can share with one another. I think that's what I'm gonna start doing. I'm gonna share my scam videos, my spiritual tourism videos, you know, safety tips on how to travel through India, especially as a female solo traveler. And my story time videos are going to be coming back because I stopped doing story time videos years ago. That means I have tons of travel stories to share with you guys. So if that interests you and you actually made it this far, please like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that button to get notifications when I do upload. All of that really does help with the algorithm, guys. And you guys have an amazing day from Live, Love, Life, and Travel.